Let's go back to step number 1, which is take a complete job order. Now, no matter what your job order form looks like, every job order should contain the following categories of information. Category number 1, job description information, in which we want to ask, what is the title? What are the duties? Describe an average work week. Yeah, come on, Bern, we know that. We know that. We want to get title and duties. Sure, that's obvious. Yeah, it is obvious, isn't it? But I've seen an awful lot of job orders with a title, 3 words, a number, and a recruiter's initials on them. And the recruiter is working that job order, and the recruiter shouldn't be. And you know what the trap is? The trap is that because we all specialize in an area, we may have worked this same job order before 5 times, or we may have done searches for the same kind of person 10 times before. So instead of taking complete duties, we assume we know what this title means. But I'll tell you this, if there's a slightly crooked speck in this job order, or a slight additional speck, it's going to make a difference in who they hire. And if you haven't asked, what are the duties, you're not going to know about that crooked speck or that different speck. So ask, what's the title, what are the duties, describe an average work week, get a complete job description. Second category of information, compensation information. What is the salary range for this position? What's the low end, what's the mid-range, what's the high end? Come on, Bern! We know that. As I go through this job order, I'm going to make an unflattering comparison between what I call the pro and the new guy. Now, I've had guys work for me with 20 years experience who take a job order like this. This is Pete the pro talking to his friend John, the director of operations at Kraft Foods. Hi, John, this is Pete. Hi, Pete. John, I understand you have an opening for a plant manager at your cheese plant. Is that correct? Yeah, Pete, that's right. John, what do you want? Someone who knows cheese processing and high-speed packaging? Yeah, Pete, that'd be terrific. What do you want to pay, John? 45, 46? Yeah, that'd be great, Pete. John, how about somebody from Carnation or Hunt West? Is that a good candidate for you? Oh, Pete, that'd be wonderful. Okay, John, I'll be back to you in a couple of days with a candidate. You ever heard anything like that before? Not us, not us. What just happened here? Huh? Pete just dictated a job order to himself. He said, what do you want, John this? What do you want, John that? And John just went, yep, yep, yep. And now Pete's going to work on that job order. But the new guy doesn't know any better. He gets complete title, duties, complete specs. Then we get to compensation information. Write this down. Follow me here. New guy says, what's the salary range for the position? Low, mid, and high. And John says, well, the low end is 40. Mid-range is 45. High end is 50. New guy says, well, John, if I find you someone who's doing that job right now for one of your competitors, but already earning 50, can you come up with any more money? And John says, oh, I'd hate to do that. New guy says, yeah, but could you come up with any more? John says, well, $2,000 maximum. Where are we now? 52, that's right. New guy says, John, do you provide a bonus? John says, yeah, this is a productivity bonus. It can be worth $1,500 the first year. Brings us up to what? New guy says, well, how about a company automobile? John says, nope, nobody here, not even the president gets a company automobile. We do provide a mileage reimbursement allowance of $200 a month. Let's round that off to $2,500 a year. And where does that bring us? 56. New guy says, well, John, how about first review? When do you give the first review? And John says, well, the first review can be at the end of 6 months, and it can be worth 5%. Now, 5% on a base of 50 is $2,500. But the candidate would only get it for 6 months of the year, which is $1,250, which brings us up to $57,250. New guy doesn't know any better, says, John, do you provide profit sharing? John lights up. He says, we have been making a ton of money. There's been a check in everybody's envelope for the last 3 Christmases equal to 10% of their base. Now, 10% on a base of 50 is what? 5. Brings us up to what? 62,250. That's right. What does Pete think this job pays? 45, 46. Why? Well, because he told the guy 45, 46. That's why he thinks that. Pete's going to be looking for someone who is earning what now? 40. New guy's got a package of 62. He's going to be looking for someone who's earning what? 55. 55. It's decision time. John has two people sitting in front of them. One of them is earning 40. One of them is earning 55. 9 times out of 10, which one is the best candidate? 55, sure. Who's going to make this placement? The new guy. Why? Because he's got the best candidate. Why does he have the best candidate? Had more money to work with. Why does he have more money to work with? Because he asked all the questions. Get every dime of cash value in that package. It's very seldom that you're going to see $10,000 left on the plate after they've hired a candidate. They usually use up the whole package to get the best guy. Now, decision maker said to Pete, yep, 45, 46 is great. He wasn't lying. See, Pete asked a sloppy question. What do you want to pay, 45, 46? And he got a careless answer. John did what every decision maker does. He looked at the rec, and he looked at the mid-range of the salary range. Mid-range is 45. It was 40, 45, 50. He said, yeah, that's what I want to pay. Ask careless questions, you get careless answers. Ask specific questions, you'll get specific answers. Get every dime of cash value so that you can compete. Next category of information on our job order is fee. Fee clearance. I assume if we send you a qualified candidate whom you do hire, you'll pay our agency fee. Now, quote the percentage and the dollar amount at the mid-range. Say at $45,000 of salary, our fee would be 30%, which is $13,500. Now, has anybody in this room ever had a company say, well, that's not what we pay? Huh? I want to editorialize about that for just a second. Do you know that 10 years ago fee cutting didn't exist? Did not exist. And do you know that it wasn't the companies who cut the fee? Guess who cut the fees? Recruiters cut the fees. Recruiters who couldn't compete on a skill level with good recruiters started going to those companies and saying, I'll work that job for a flat fee of $5,000. I'll work it for 10%. It never occurred to companies to cut the fees. Why would recruiters cut their fees? Lawyers don't cut their fees. Accountants cut their fees. Well, it didn't take them long to get the message, did it? Now you can't call 5 companies without 3 of them saying to you, cut your fees. Well, do you think it's going to stop here? Do you think that now that companies have gotten recruiters to come down from 30% to 20%, they're going to say, oh, that's enough. We're going to stop reducing their fees. We got them down low enough. No! They're going to keep doing it until recruiters say stop. And if recruiters don't say stop, we'll be working at 10% in 10 more years and 1% in 20 years. Draw the line. I mean, draw the line. Now, I want to tell you something. Every firm that a recruiter is working with at 20% is paying some other recruiter 30%. See, I've consulted for these companies, the Fortune 500 companies, the defense companies, the financial services companies, consumer products companies. I've been in the employment departments. I have seen the rate schedules. They're paying 14 firms 20%. 4 firms 25%. 2 firms 30%. You know those formidable 9-page statements of fee policy that they send you? Very official, aren't they? They're printed. Except for the space where the fee goes. That's typed in. Why do you think it's typed in? Huh? Why do you think? Because it's negotiable. It's different for him and for him and for him. It's different. Stop cutting fees. Why do you think some recruiters get 30% from these companies? Why do you think? Because they're good. Now, do the companies ever say to them, we want you to cut your fees? Sure they do. And what do they say back to the companies? They say, why should I give you this candidate for 20% when your competitor is giving me 30% for the same candidate? That's what they say. And do some companies ever say, take it or leave it? Yeah, they do. And what do these recruiters do? They walk away. And what do those companies do? They work with a recruiter, the 15%, the 20% recruiter until he doesn't deliver. Then they come back to the 30% recruiter. This much I can tell you, because in the last 6 months I have been in dozens of firms, and I've spoken to recruiters from hundreds of firms across the country. There are offices full of recruiters across this country who never, ever cut a fee. Never cut a fee. All-star recruiters are like all-star lawyers. They get paid more. Hold out. You guys are capable of getting full fee if you'll just negotiate for it. You know what our problem is? Our problem is that we're always negotiating the amount of the cut. Think about it. Always negotiating the amount of the cut. We sit there waiting for the next cut, and then we negotiate the amount of the cut. Well, stop. Start putting pressure in the other direction. Go back to your offices. Get a consensus. Agree that come 6 months from now, April of '88, we are going to raise our fees, our minimum fees, 1%. You know, there are firms all across the country doing this right now with success. Firms that are notifying their client companies, come April 1st of '88, we are raising our minimum fees to 21%. What do you think the companies are doing when they get those letters? Nothing. It's in the future. It's a painless amount. That's how fees started coming down, in painless amounts. And look where they are now. So start raising them in painless amounts, but it takes consensus and it takes discipline. One person breaks the line, then everybody's going to break the line. Don't. Hold it at 21. Now, next time a firm calls you and says, hey, it's that time of the year again, we're going to have to decrease your fees. I want you to tell them, look, what a coincidence. I was just picking up the telephone to call you. We're going to have to increase our fees because our costs are going up. You want to decrease them, we want to increase them. We're going to have to work this out. Stop negotiating the amount of the cut and start putting pressure in the opposite direction. Now, before we move on, same thing applies to guarantees. Do you know that 10 years ago guarantees didn't exist except in office support placements, accounting placements, and general agencies? They were the only places that guarantees existed. Well, then some firms started giving a 30-day money-back guarantee to gain a competitive edge, and that evolved into a 60-day money-back guarantee, which became the 90-day money-back guarantee today. Well, have you heard about the 12-month money-back guarantee? Oh, have you heard about it? Oh, you will. See, your client companies will be coming to you soon saying, look, this is what your competitors are doing, and we want you to do it too. They are not your competitors. They're people who have to give a 12-month money-back guarantee to get the business. They're not as good as you are. When have you finally earned your money? After 11 months and 30 days? If this deal blows up, if the candidate walks, or if the company doesn't keep a promise it's made, and the candidate leaves after 11 months and 29 days, should you have to earn that fee over? I don't think so. I think your money is earned when the candidate goes to work. Now, that said, even in the absence of a guarantee, if the deal goes away, blows up because of the candidate's negligence or my negligence, I'm going to replace him for free in the absence of a guarantee. Hold the line on guarantees and hold the line on fees. Fees should be going up. Guarantees should be going down. Unfortunately, right now it's going in the other direction. Fees are going down and guarantees are going up. Hold the line. Next category of information, recruiting information. Recruiting information, that's what we are, you know, we're recruiters. We find candidates to fill positions for client companies, and yet this category of information is usually blank on a job order. Why is it usually blank? It's blank because the recruiter works this kind of position all the time. He knows who the company was. He knows where the candidate is. Don't you? Well, from now on, when you're writing a job order, write it as if somebody who works a different discipline is going to work it. See, always get a complete roadmap, a roadmap that's going to tell you who you're looking for and where is he. Ask generic recruiting questions all the time. First, who is the candidate? What is the background of the ideal candidate? What's his education, experience? What's required? What's preferred? What kind of person are you looking for? That personal component is just as important as the background itself. That's who he is. Now, where is he? Ask these 4 simple generic recruiting questions. What industries would he be working in? What companies would he be working in? What would his department be within those companies? And what would his title be within those departments? You know, those are very simple questions, and it narrows the universe and leads us right to the candidate. But come on, Tony, I worked banking, and that guy would work in a bank. Yeah, and maybe 3 other kinds of companies, too, that you would never think of, but that the person doing the hiring would know about. So always ask, what industries would he be working in? Always get a complete roadmap. Ask generic recruiting questions. Now ask, are there any companies that you don't want him to come from? What companies would you most like him to come from? And is there anybody in particular you'd like to talk to? Anybody here ever had a company give you the name of a candidate they'd like to hire? Sure, sure. Happens more often if you ask. Boy, that fee sure spends well, doesn't it? When you make a couple of calls and make $10,000. Recruiting information. When we do the characteristics of a good job order, that is very often left to last because recruiters just don't think about taking roadmaps. Always get a complete roadmap. You know, the traditional way for a recruiter finding a candidate is to go to his boss's office and say, where do I find this guy? Well, I want you to take a job order as if you were standing in a phone booth in some state where you don't live, and we're taking a job order for some position you'd never, ever, ever worked before. That's the way to take a job order. Next category of information, benefits. When we're writing our job order, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. We want to know about hospital, life, dental, stock purchase, stock option, 401k, company match salary savings. At the office support level, we want to know about subsidized parking, lunches, transportation, anything that will add cash value to the position. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on benefits when we're taking the job order. Now, you know what? Most recruiters, if they've even gotten this much information, get off the phone now. Think about it. Most recruiters now have title, duties, money, background of the ideal candidate, fee clearance, benefit, and they say, oh boy, I got a job order. I'm going to go to work on it. But they don't have a job order, do they? No, this is not a job order. That's a spec sheet. And if all you have is title, duties, and money, then when you go to recruit candidates, all you're going to be able to present to them is title, duties, and money. And they're not going to be turned on by title, duties, and money. If you call a tax accountant and describe tax accountant, title, duties, and money, you're going to be boring 49 out of 50 of them to death. That is not the way to present jobs. It's not even the way to match jobs, by the way, to people. The way to present jobs to people and to match jobs to people is to have opportunity and company information so that we can present opportunities and companies so that we can match opportunity to type. And right now we have no idea what the opportunity is. We have no idea about the company. So let's ask, what is the next step up for this person? Where can he be in 3 years? Where can he be in 5 years? Tell me about the last 2 people who had this position. Where did they go? The investment banker recruiter says, to jail. Opportunities at companies. Why is your company a good place to work? Why should somebody who is happy, securely employed, quit his job to come to work for you? Tell me about your company. Opportunities at companies. That's what we want to present to candidates. Now, let's think about this for a second. We want to sell that. So we're asking our employer, what is the next step up for this person? We're going to be in 3 years. We're going to be in 5 years. And the employer says, the person who gets this job can move up 2 pay grades in 1 year and then go from division to corporate the following year. That's a superstar opportunity. Can we sell that? Huh? Sure we can. Who are we going to sell a superstar opportunity to? Superstars. You bet. You bet. We say, what's the next step up for this person? We're going to be in 3 years. We're going to be in 5 years. And the employer says, well, the person who gets this job can move up 1 pay grade a year for 2 years. Then he gets to compete with 3 other people for a management position. That's an average opportunity. Can we sell that? Of course we can. Who are we going to sell it to? Average people. See, 90% of opportunities are average, 90% of people are average. What's the next step up for this person? Where can he be in 3 years? Where can he be in 5 years? And the employer says, hold it right there. Person you're replacing sat at that desk for 20 years. Died at the desk yesterday. That's why we're filling the position. We want someone else to come in there and sit there for the next 20 years and die at that desk. Can we sell that opportunity? Sure we can. To who? Somebody who wants the predictability, the safety, sure, the stability of that. Of course we can sell it. Now, you know what? The spec, the job description for the position that would leap up 2 pay grades in 1 year might be exactly the same as the job description for the person who would get to sit there for the next 20 years. In other words, the duties are exactly the same. And if you didn't find out about opportunity, you might wind up just matching spec to spec and sending out the person who wanted to sit there for 20 years on the leap up 2 pay grades. Or you might wind up sending the superstar on the slug position, and you don't want to do that. We want to find out about the company, too. Why is your company a good place to work? Tell me about your company. And the guy says, don't you read the paper? We're in the headlines every week. We are gobbling up our competitors. We have doubled in size in the last 6 months. Can we sell that company? Sure, that's an exciting place to be. You bet we can sell it. We say, why is your company a good place to work? And the guy says, well, you know, we are a quiet company. We've never been in the headlines. You've never heard of us before, probably. We've been in business for 50 years, making a toy. We have had the same president for the last 30 years, plus or minus 2 employees for the last 20 years. Can we sell that company? Sure, I just gave you 6 selling points. Of course we can sell that company. We say, why is your company a good place to work? Tell me about your company. And the employer says, don't you read the paper? We're in Chapter 11. We got product problems. We got turnover. We got autocratic management. And we need somebody in here desperately to help us with that. Can we sell that company? You bet we can. Of course we can. Who do we want? Lee Iacocca. That's exactly right, Mike. We want Lee Iacocca. We want a hero. We want somebody who's going to come in and turn it around. Now, if we didn't know, if we didn't have that company information, we might wind up sending out the person who wanted that nice, quiet campus to that Chapter 11 place. And boy, that would be a mismatch, wouldn't it? His specs matched, but the opportunity, the company, and the type didn't match. We want to find out about opportunity and company information so that we can sell the position better and so that we can match opportunity and company to type. Now, next category of information, interviewing information. We want to prepare our candidate to go in and what? Win. Win, that's right. And the way to prepare him to go in and win is to give him all the information ahead of time about who he's going to be meeting with and what they're going to talk about. So let's ask our employer, who will this position report to, and what's his or her background? You know, if we can find somebody who worked at the same companies or somebody who went to the same schools, that's common ground. And common ground is the beginning of good chemistry. Now let's find out about the interview itself. What is the interviewing process? How many interviews? With whom? Over what period of time? How long does each one last? What's the agenda for each interview? You know, if there are multiple interviews, I guarantee you there's a specific agenda for each interview. Perhaps your guy has to come in and interview with group, district, and division. Well, group may want to talk to him about his career to date. District want to talk to him about his plans for the future. Division might want to talk to him about the job he'd be doing at this company. Let's find out about the interviewers. Tell me about group. When he interviews, what kinds of questions does he ask? What kinds of answers does he like to hear? Who does most of the talking? How long has he been at the company? What kind of guy is he? Find out as much about the content of the interview and the style of the interviewers as possible. Ask, do you give any tests? Wall Street Journal says there are 10 times as many tests being given today as just 5 years ago. There are skills tests, aptitude tests, substance abuse tests, psychological tests, handwriting analysis, all kinds of tests. Fortune 500 companies are asking VPs with 30 years experience to take aptitude tests, and they don't like it. Some of them just won't do it. And if a candidate won't do it, you want to find out ahead of time before you spend 2 or 3 weeks working with them. Ask the employer, when do you make the offer? When do you make the offer? The employer says, well, we want to see 3 or 4 people first. Well, that's no answer. Ask the question again. But when do you make the offer? Well, after we see 3 or 4 people, we're going to bring one of the finalists back for a second interview to meet 2 group VPs. But when do you make the offer? Well, if the 2 group VPs like him at the second interview, we will send him home with an offer. Right here, where we're taking the job order, right now, we want to find out about what their timetable is for extending that offer. We either want to find out if there is a timetable, what is it? Or if there is not a timetable, we want to suggest one. You see, in order for us to bring this deal together, in order for us to broker it properly, to negotiate it properly, we have to be dealing with specifics. Specifics of dollars and specifics of time. Now we know that they plan to send the finalist home from the second interview with an offer. Let's say our candidate becomes a finalist, and the night before the second interview, they buy a week. Well, we know that means something because they've told us they intend to send the finalist home with an offer. But if we didn't know that they intend to send the finalist home with an offer, we wouldn't know what it means. We just figure that is their timetable. Find out exactly what the timetable is. How do you describe your company's image? How do you like to see a candidate dress? Last category of information, status. How long has the position been open? Why is it open? How many people have you interviewed so far? Describe the one you like best. Did you make him an offer? Or why didn't you hire him? Now, recruiters, is our favorite position one that's been open for 3 months and they've seen 22 people and made no offers? Huh? Is that our favorite position? No, absolutely not. Because there's a complete lack of what? Urgency. That's right. Now, of course, some recruiters will say, but Tony, that might be a great position to work. They might be ready to hire now. I don't know what gives you that impression. It's been open for 3 months and they've seen 22 people. Other recruiters will say, but I haven't worked it yet. Listen, today, if a position's been open for 3 months, good recruiters have worked it. Count on it. Count on it. They've broken their pick on that job order. And I don't want you to follow in their footsteps. No, we don't want to work a position that's been open for 3 months. We want to work a position that's been open for an hour. And they have to hire right now. Or better still, our favorite position would be one that's been open for 3 weeks. And they interviewed 4 people the first week, made one an offer, and he accepted. He was supposed to show up for work this morning. And he didn't. I mean, that's the ridiculous extreme, of course. That doesn't happen very often, but it illustrates the point. There's great urgency because they thought the position was filled, and they've demonstrated a willingness to work fast. They saw 4 people the first week, and they made one an offer. Now let's talk about urgency for a second. It is very important to us that we have urgency, that the employer have an urgent need to hire. Now what is urgency? Urgency is a desire on the part of the employer to get that person on board right now. It's got to be important to that employer. How do most recruiters determine urgency? Well, the recruiter says, is this an urgent opening? Isn't that true? Recruiter says, is this an urgent opening? And what does the employer say? See, have you ever heard the employer say no? Of course, the employer says no, then you're home. The employer says yes, and the recruiter drops everything and works on it for 3 days. That isn't determining urgency. Listen, I want you to make that employer pay for your effort. I want him to commit some time or effort before you commit yours. Here's how we're going to determine urgency. Ask the employer, how important is it for you to hire someone right now? That's almost as bad as, is it an urgent opening? That's a leading question. The employer will say, very important, very important. Is it important enough for me to drop everything and work on it full-time for 3 days and 3 nights? Well, the employer will think about that for a minute because, in effect, you're making him ask you. to drop everything and work on it full time for 3 days or 3 nights? He'll think about it. And if he says, no, it's not that important, don't work it. And if he says, yes, it is that important, say, great. Then I'm sure it's important enough for you to give me 2 hours on Thursday to see the people I find during these 3 days and 3 nights. Now, if that employer has an urgent opening, he'll be thrilled to death to give you 2 hours in return for 3 days and nights of your time. And if he doesn't give you 2 hours, don't spend 3 days and nights working on it. That is the test for urgency. It's almost 100% infallible. Make that employer pay for your time with time or effort of his own. That is the true test for urgency. Now, the last thing we're going to do on this job order, we're going to say to the employer, look, give me 5 questions that you would use to screen a candidate at the front of the interview. 5 questions. And give me the right answers. I will ask all candidates that I talk to these questions. How many should my candidate answer correctly before you want to see him? These are called targeting questions. They'll have to do with knowledge or skills or experience, things that would be second nature to the employer and to the candidate, but would not be second nature to you. Targeting questions. You see, one of my goals with you is to bring down your send-out to placement ratio. And the way to bring down that send-out to placement ratio is to make sure that your candidates are more on the money. And this will make sure that your more candidates are right on the money. Okay. That is the job order. Now, we've been talking about it for half an hour, 45 minutes. It actually takes about a half an hour to write a complete job order. To write a complete job order. And then, of course, what about for the new guy? The new guy is very often not going to be able to get the employer to sit still for all of that, is the new guy? Huh? So maybe the new guy should just take part of the information, go to work on that job order. Is that true? No. Absolutely not. You need every single bit of it before you go to work on it. Now, if you know that you're not going to be able to get that employer to sit still for half an hour, here are the questions that you ask first. Title, duties, money, and urgency. Title, duties, money, and urgency. And if those 4 line up right, then you make an appointment to speak to that employer again at lunchtime or after lunch or this evening, or an appointment to get in your car, drive over there, and talk to him. You must have all of the information before you start to work this job order. Now, we have written a job order. We have written a job order. But we're not ready to work it. Because there's a more important step than writing it. And what is that? Qualifying it. Very good, Rose. Qualifying it. That's right. You see, the big biller doesn't think in terms of writing it. He thinks in terms of qualifying it, because only by qualifying it does he decide whether or not it is worth working. So right now we are going to go over the characteristics of a good job order. Find out what characteristics make the job order worth working. Now, what are the characteristics of a good job order? Let's go to the back of the room. What is one?
How about complete specs on an employer's needs?
Complete specs, title, duties, job description, description average work week. I don't want you working job orders anymore that just have a title, 3 words, a number, and your initials on them. What else?
Complete compensation information.
Complete compensation information. What was the difference between Pete and Mike? Or rather, Pete and the new guy. The new guy had much more money to work with than Pete because he got every dime of cash value in that package. What else?
A good ratio of the compensation package to the specifications.
Have you ever taken a job order for a $60,000 candidate, but they want to pay $40,000? Has that ever happened to you? Sure. Well, before you start to work that job, I want you to get those figures into alignment, because it's not worth working yet. I want you to go to your files and pull out 5 people that they've described and call them back and say, look, these guys are earning $60K. Now, if you want to pay $40K, here's what I can get for you. But if you want this kind of guy, you're going to have to upgrade the salary, come up with $60K.
Recruiting information. What kind of candidate do they want to see?
Roadmap. We want to know who they're looking for, and where do we go to find this person. And remember, the trap of specialization is that you often assume you know who they're looking for, and you assume you know where this candidate is. Never make that assumption. Always get a complete roadmap. Okay, give me a characteristic of a good job order.
That the candidate exists.
Have you ever taken a job order that looks great on paper, and you start to do the search, and you realize there are 3 of these guys in North America? There's one in Maine, and one in Kansas, one in Ottawa. You don't want to work that. You want to make sure there's a good candidate pool. You don't want to work needle and haystack searches. Paul?
You need opportunity and company information.
Opportunity and company information, something to sell besides title, duties, and money. We also need opportunity and company information so that we can match opportunity to type. Without opportunity information, we're matching spec to spec, and we're going to wind up making mismatches. That's right. Ken, characteristic of a good job order.
Fee cleared, full fee.
Fee cleared, full fee, and rec signed. Fee cleared, full fee, rec signed. Every time you take a job order, make sure that you ask, does anybody else need to sign off on this rec? Have you ever gotten to the finish line with a search only to find out that some guy didn't sign it and therefore they're not going to make a hire on this? You bet. Mark, characteristic of a good job order.
You've got to establish the sense of urgency to fill the position.
Urgency. You mean where you ask, is this an urgent opening? No. You want to make sure that that employer is paying for your time with his time and effort. Make sure you get a commitment of time from that employer before you start to work it. Characteristic of a good job order, Ken?
Cooperative employer.
Somebody who's going to help you to make this placement, a cooperative employer. He's going to see your people. He's going to take your phone calls, going to give you feedback. You bet. That's very important. Terry, characteristic of a good job order?
Complete interviewing information, including the hiring process.
We want complete interviewing information so that we can prepare our candidate to go in and what? Win. That's right. Mike, characteristic of a good job order?
Decision maker contact.
Decision maker contact. We want to be working with the decision maker, don't we? But have you ever called into a company, made a presentation to a decision maker, and in a half an hour you get a call back from somebody at that company who says, at this company you work with me? Has that ever happened to you before? Well, you got a couple of choices there. You can go back over personnel's head, in which case you're going to make a lethal enemy, or you can turn your back on that company, which is turning your back on a source of a lot of business, or you can work their way. Now listen, if the law of the land at this company is work with personnel or don't work there, go ahead, do it. Start there. You know, just as personnel can be your enemy, they can be your friend. Just as they can put your resume on the bottom of the pile, they can put your resume on the top of the pile. Just as they can shut the door in your face, they can open doors for you. Go ahead, start with personnel and build a relationship and start making placements and start visiting that company, or if you can't visit the company, just call them constantly. And every time you go out there, say to personnel, you know, I'd like to meet this guy, and I'd like to meet this guy, and I'd like to meet this guy. Let me tell you what happens. Over a period of time, if you are developing, if you are building a relationship with that company and making placements, you are going to wind up dealing with the decision makers, because they're going to come to you. They're going to say, who is this person who's putting these good people in our company? They're not going to want to work through personnel. They are going to want direct contact. See, the kind of relationship that I want you to build with a company is not built over one placement or 1 week or 1 month. It's built over months and years. It takes patience to build. But once it's there, it outlasts personnel. It outlasts generations of management. They come and go, but you stay. But watch out. There's a trap here. And the trap is one of complacency. You see, once it's working with personnel, there's a tendency to say, this is great. I don't need to meet higher levels of people. I'm making lots of placements right now. Well, I met a lady in Phoenix a few months ago who told me a story. She said that she had been working with a company for years. She was an office support recruiter. She had placed 50 out of 90 people at this insurance company in Phoenix. She had placed so many people at this company that she had the company's name on her license plate. She was working only through personnel. She had no manager level contact. Working with personnel, all her placements were office support. Personnel leaves. New personnel person comes on board. She makes one placement with the new personnel person. Placement walks in the first week. New personnel person says, flaky recruiter, cuts her off. And I got her about a month later. And she told me the story, and I said, no, stop the presses. I guarantee you the president doesn't know that this has happened. You're the most important resource this company has. Let's write a letter to the president. And she did, and she's back in good standing. He got her right back in there immediately, but the danger was proven. The danger of leaving that relationship at personnel. In a larger company, she might never have gotten back in again. Go ahead, start with personnel, make friends, use them to meet higher levels of people. Make sure you force that relationship higher. All right, those are the characteristics of a good job order. Before a big biller is going to work this job order, he's going to say, does it have complete specs? Not just a title, 3 words, and a number. Do we have complete compensation information? Do I have every dime of cash value so I can buy the best candidate? Do I have a good ratio of money to specs? If they're asking for a $60,000 candidate, are they willing to pay $60,000? Do I have a roadmap so I know who they're looking for and exactly what industries, companies, departments, and titles, where to go to look? Do I have opportunity and company information so I can sell more than title, duties, and money? Is the fee cleared, full fee, rec sign? Does the candidate exist, not just 3 of them in North America? Is there real urgency? Is this employer willing to commit some of his time in return for my time? Do I have a cooperative employer, somebody who is going to help me to make this placement? Do I have complete interviewing information so I can prepare my candidate to go in and what? Win. And we want to make sure that we have decision-maker contact, but that's the only one of these characteristics that we are going to give ground up front. The only one. We will work for that. When we have all of these, we have a complete job order, and we're ready to fill it.